I've got the vise mounted on this angle plate, which is adjustable. And I've got these at an angle as best as I could kind of measure that angle that's on the head there. Once I make a cut or two, I can kind of see better if I'm in the ballpark. It's really hard to measure on that styrene part because it's just kind of rounded and whatnot. Now I can think of top of my head 3 different ways I could do this angle. I just chose to do this because I have this fixture. I wanted to try it, and it's kind of handy because I can flop it back down and be flat. I could angle the whole column of the machine and do it. I could have done it that way, but then you've got to set it back up, and it would take more time to set it up and then to reset it back up than to actually do this. I could have just mounted the parts in the vise on an angle and cut them. And that's the thing with machining. There's really there's very few concrete rules, aside from your basics of machining and speeds and feeds and coolant and certain things. When you start getting into accuracy, there's kind of guidelines you got to follow. But I mean, generally speaking, machining is kind of more as much art as it is, technical. It's, like I said in the very beginning, your imagination is going to have a lot to do with how you go about doing things. So this is a pretty basic setup, though. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and jump to it quick. I'm going to touch off the corner, and I'm going to feed down a little bit. I'm going to take it easy because I got both parts mounted, and I don't want to push too hard. I'm not going to be cutting a whole lot anyway, so let's see. It's always good to get your Z-axis up out of the way. Windmills are really sharp. I mean, all you gotta do is just graze against it and it'll cut you. So, it helps get stuff up out of the way if you can. Alright. All I've done now is I've just dropped the plate back down flat. Kind of moved into position, brought my cutter back down. It's a 2-flute end mill. So what I'm going to do is look at it kind of straight on here and get it pretty much, side to side this way, looking pretty close. And then I'm going to take a piece of paper, slide up under it. Then I'm just going to bump it. Make sure my hand's not in the way. See if I can do this like that. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of bump it down until it touches the paper. And there we go. It's touching the paper. It's actually cutting the paper. Alright, so I'm just above the, just above. Alright, and then I'm going to move out of the way. Alright. And I've visually aligned that far edge of the end mill with the edge of my angle. So, and I'm almost touching. I'm probably 4 or 5 thousandths, I'm gonna guess, Actually, the paper is 3.5 thousandths. So I'm probably a good 3 thousandths from touching. And I'm going to go down just by looking at this part. I'm going to say I'm going to go down 10 thousandths. See how that looks. So I'm actually going to go 13 because I got to include the amount on the paper there. All right, so let's see if we can bump it down to about 13. Okay, that's 13. All right, and then we'll cut her on, make sure that she's clearing. Cut it on, make a pass, see how it looks, and go from there. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to go back across and just do a light cleanup. And maybe just go down just a hair. That's 3 thousandths. Alright, we'll take the Z back up out of the way. Okay, thought I'd show where we're at before I go any further. Let's see if I can, without too much glare and all. But you can see where we machined that angle on there, and then you can see the flat point that has been machined on there. Let's see if I can point here. Yeah, there's that angle. There's that angle, and then right here you've got a flat. So you got this much of the angle still left showing. So it's, you kind of got the angle, a little bit of a flat, and then right in here is going to be the 4 holes on each part. We'll leave them set up in here like this, so there's no reason to change too much. And that black on there is from my Sharpie, where I'm colored, and then you can see my black on the side where I made a reference mark on the side. In case my angle was off and I was going too deep on one side or the other, I could stop and kind of change that angle before I took another pass. But I'm happy with that so far. Okay, so we got changed over. We've got a drill bit in there. I'm going to drill a hole, and then I'm going to drill all my holes, 4 in each, for the plugs. And I'm sorry for the glare. I'm already over the center of where I want to be this way, and then I'm just going to drill my holes and then go over and drill these 4 holes. I've got my dimensions wrote down, and then I'm just going to do like I did before and just peck the drill down through there. I'm going to go 1/8 or about 100 thousandths deep, something memorable, because I'm going to insert some of this 1/16 tube. I'm going to cut off little pieces of it on the lathe, so when they're put down in the holes, just a tiny bit will stick up, just to give it that extra little raised detail. That would also be something that maybe the boot could go over, and the wire could go in. The wire could go in the tube, and then the boot could go over the outside of the tube possibly. It may be a little, it's about the size of the other head, these little lumps, so that's what I'm gonna go with. Like I said, this ain't, I'm not doing an exact replica of a Hemi cover, but just something in the ballpark. So I'll drill a few holes and then we'll forward on to the next part. Give her just a little bit of, put a little lubrication on these. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lock this table. See, I've got it slowed way down. Alright, there's the 8 holes now. They're a little offset from head to head. I noticed they're kind of like that on the actual, I keep saying heads, these valve covers, but you guys know what I mean. But okay, next setup. What I did is I turned the vise 45 degrees on the table, because when I measured that angle on the corner right here, it looked just about 45 degrees. So then I made sure that my part was right at the end of the vise. I don't know if you can see that well, getting some glare here, but you know, I put my piece up here and made sure that part was right at the end of the vise. And the reason I did that is because after I cut the corner off of this one, I'm going to swap these pieces out. I'm going to push this one back to that edge, so I'm back to the same spot on the second one, and I don't have to do a bunch of setup. Then I went down with my end mill. I went right up to the edge of where I'm wanting to cut with this edge of the cutter. Then I came out and I went down and I used my paper and I laid it on the flange underneath, you know, I laid it on the flange down here and brought my end mill down until it pinched the paper on the flange. Then I went an extra 3 thou and I zeroed out my Z-axis. So when I bring this back down to 0, it should be cutting right, skimming the top of the flange. So what all I need to do now is bring my cutter down to 0 and go straight across, swap the parts out, go straight across. So if it doesn't jerk the part out of the vise, we'll be in business. Whoop. Alright. Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the table. I'm going to lock the table so it can't go side to side. Alright. go on past. Okay, and there's the first cut. And then what we'll do is we'll go back in and add a little profile there for that bolt hole. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and take the parts out. I need to get my cutter out of the way. Go ahead and move this out of the way and show you what I mean about lining the part up beforehand. So what I'll do is make sure everything's clean first. So no chips get up under the part when I move them. And then I'll just loosen that up. I'll slide this out, slide this one over. It'll clamp a little better if you got both parts in there. If you just have one, it will tend to kind of cock the clamp a little bit. And this will hold a lot better since these parts are exactly the same width. Then I'll take my little, just any flat edge, and looks like I've moved a bit here. I'll take my little edge and make sure it's right there against the, let me tighten this up a bit. Make sure I'm back where I was with the other part. Okay, tighten that down. All right. And then what I'm going to have to do is raise my cutter up so I can jump over the part. But I'm not going to move any other positioning on it. The reason I'm cutting in this direction is that the cutter is kind of pushing against the part. If I went the other way, the cutter would actually be grabbing at the part. And most of the time you always want to have your cutter pushing as it's cutting rather than grabbing its way down through the part, because it definitely will grab the part. Alright, so we should get an exact same cut now when I go across. Alright, is that simple? If you can see the little angle on the end of the part now, on both of them, and they're both the same. It was that simple. One setup, and I was able to do both parts real quick like. Alright, one more thing to do before proceeding is clean up the top of the parts, because I've been kind of scratching on them, scribing marks, beating them down in the vise and pretty much just abusing the very top of these parts. I need to go across and just clean that top off nice and smooth like the rest of the part. And so all I did, I just spun the vise back straight onto the table here. I'm going to bring my cutter down till it just touches the top of the part. Then I'm going to move it off the part. I'm going to drop it just a couple thousandths, and then I'm going to make a pass across the top. And I'm going to go at full speed and a real slow feed, and that'll give it a nice, almost mirror type finish. So here we go. Just barely skim the top, just a little fluid on there. I'm going to come down just a tiny bit. Okay, that's 3/1000. The more time I spend on this cut, is the less time I'll have to spend on, kind of sanding and polishing and whatnot when I get to that point. So it's worth just taking it real slow on that last cut that you're doing. I'm just going to clip this corner off, but I'm going to leave the flange coming around. The flange is 30/1000 wide. So what I did is I know this is 45 degrees. I just stuck the piece down in the vise until this surface was even with the jaw of the vise. And then I brought my end mill down and touched the jaw of the vise, and I went up with my end mill 30. And so I should be able to come up and go whack and leave 30/1000. So again, just trying to keep it as simple as possible. As you can see, I'm not doing a lot of crazy indicating fixtures, all kind of stuff. I'm just trying to show how things can be done, pretty simply. So we'll take that off. And it's going to go pretty slow again. This is actually a pretty thick, cut that I'm making, but it doesn't have to go far. So again, tooling always makes a difference. Gives you a much better finish. And here goes nothing. I'm gonna let it go on across. The back side is going to cut a little bit. Go ahead and let this go on across. Alright. And then we'll take a look at it. Alright, get the part out of there. Alright, and then there's the that's with the corners clipped, but leaving that flange. And then I'll go ahead and set these down, and where you guys can see a better shot of where we're at on them. Alright, so there's kind of where we're at now. Just kind of go around a little bit. You can see my angle there, and then you can see where I did the did that kind of undercut there. There's the angle going down, you know, and then where we clipped the corners, but left the flange. Hold on, sorry about that. Let me get back in focus here. There we go. You know, and then that's where I went around the corner, but left the flange. Still got the, you know, turn that around. Same there, you can see it. And you might notice that I added these holes here. While when I finished these holes, I went ahead and added these two. I didn't film it. And that's where I'm going to make the little breathers, and they're just going to have a stem that sticks down in there just to locate them. And of course on these holes we're going to have those inserts. And then also something I didn't really notice until now is that I need to clip the edges of, if I can turn it the right way, I need to clip the edges of these holes. Which one am I pointing at? Yeah. This little bit of meat sticking out right here, actually that's where it goes into the hole. It's just going to come straight out. Same thing at this end where it goes into the hole and then straight out. This little bit of meat on the side of the holes is not there on the heads, and then also on that opposite corner, same thing. That little bit of extra sticking on the edge of that hole right there. Right there. That's just, the hole's going to come in and just come straight out. So the corners will be more rounded like you see on my example part. It's just kind of in the corner. You don't have it coming back out with this sharp little part. So that'll be clipped out. Then we'll get into rounding and all that. And but so far I think they're coming out pretty good. And I mean, this is the machine finish. You know, there's been no polishing or filing or anything done. This is just straight out of the machine. So as you can see, there's not a lot to do to get these at a very high polish. And also keep in mind, these are 125 scale. These are the little parts. You know, I mean, look at compared to the pencil. So, but you know, you see how easy it is. It's you know, I've done hardly any, you know, critical measuring or anything like that. I've been pretty well eyeballing and just kind of you know, using this as a reference. A lot of things I just didn't even measure. You can see the way I set it up and stuck with, you know, 45 degrees and 90s, and you know, the only things I really measured out were these, you know, where things had to be spaced out, like holes and things. I did measure, you know, how far to step. That way I didn't have to stop and think after each hole and, you know, spend half an hour filming me drilling holes. So, you know, but you know, these do look bigger because you've got all this meat on the bottom of them. But you know, when they're finally ready, I'm gonna flip them over and I'm gonna machine this all down until I get down to the thickness of this flange. Maybe it looks about 30 thousandths or something like that, but that would be really fragile. We couldn't machine anything if that's all we had to go by. So that's saving that for last. Keep that in mind if you ever make any heads. Leave your base nice and thick and cut that down last, or you're going to have a heck of a time. It can be done, but it'd be a heck of a job. But anyway, yeah, that's where we are for now. Looks like there'll be a third part to the video, I assume. I guess I'll show on the lathe cutting some pieces and making the little breathers and things. So that'll be the next thing that we show. Thanks for watching as usual. Post comments below. Talk to y'all later. Bye.